Hello, I'm Andrew from Limitless Park, and let's talk about growth. No, not growths. Save that for your doctor. I mean growth. You do it, I do it, but you know who doesn't do it? My new table. Don't get me wrong, I like it, but it's just so much smaller than my old table, and it won't grow at all. I guess it just needs some extra encouragement. And soil. Well, that should help. Let's just water this sucker, and now we wait. Well, I thought we'd see some progress by now. Maybe it just needs a role model. Hey, Shaq! Well, Shaq's busy. Guess the only other option is telling my table about the growth of a roller coaster company. Or what some might say, the best roller coaster company. Rocky Mountain Construction.
Rocky Mountain Construction, or RMC as I'll be referring to it from here on out, is arguably the greatest coaster manufacturer to ever exist. But hey, you don't need me to tell you that. Seriously, you don't. I'm pretty sure half the coaster community has already said it, and the other half is sick of hearing people say it and thinks they're overrated. Regardless of what side you fall on, you gotta admit they've taken the industry by storm over the past 15 years. They've built 27 coasters so far, with 2 on the way in 2025. It feels like every park in the world wants one, and a few other manufacturers have seen their success and tried to do their own take on RMC coasters, so it's safe to say they've left quite an impression on the coaster world. But that's where they are right now. How did they first get started? And how did they become one of the most well-known and respected manufacturers ever? That's what I'm going to discuss today, and if you've already heard this story before, well, don't lie. You want to hear it again, you crazy content consumer.
So let's make like the Pilgrims and journey out to Idaho to learn about this fabricator and manufacturer. Wait, that's what the Pilgrims did, right? Along with bringing smallpox over?
RMC is based in Hayden, which is a small city all the way up in the shaft of Idaho. The company was founded by Fred Grubb, whose name reminds me of this Pokemon, and his wife Susan Deadman, whose name reminds me of just dead Pokemon, I guess. When Fred was young, he was working as a welder on irrigation pipes in his hometown of Du Bois, Wyoming. After high school, he tried creating a construction company with his brother, but it didn't really go well, and by the mid-1980s, Fred ended up moving over to the city that never sleeps, Seattle, Washington. The dude was out there constructing zoo exhibits, which honestly sounds really cool, but then in 1995, he found his way into the amusement industry. You see, there's this little theme park about 15 minutes from Hayden, Idaho called Silverwood, and Fred was hired there to construct some artificial rock work, aka a coaster enthusiast's wet dream. God, look at this. This is the sexiest thing I've seen in my life. But Silverwood was impressed with his rocks, and the park's owner Gary Norton offered Fred the position of construction and maintenance director. So Fred moved back from the City of Angels to Idaho. And who does he meet there other than his future wife, who was the park's finance director? From there, I guess Gary approached Fred with the idea of building a wooden roller coaster, which ended up being Timber Terror, which was manufactured by CCI. And no, that's not me asking to be included in an email, it just stands for Custom Coasters International. That build went well, so the park said, "Damn!" and built Tremors, also by CCI, in 1999. The real catch here is that both coasters were constructed completely in-house by Fred and his team, which isn't a common thing at theme parks. It showed that Fred had quite the gift when it came to handling projects of this scale. So much so that CCI actually offered him a job managing all their construction projects. That would have probably been a safe role to take, oh shit, never mind. Well, luckily that didn't matter because Fred and Sudan decided they were going to start their own business, and in 2001, Rocky Mountain Construction was born.
And yes, if you're having a case of coaster fanboy-itis right now, this is the part where you faint.
Business was initially conducted at their home, and they employed a very small team at first. Of course, they went to the Theme Park Expo IAPA to try to make some connections and find clients. This didn't automatically mean success though. I mean, it was hard for such a small company to be taken seriously at the time, but they did land a few contracts for refurbishing old wooden roller coasters and installing some of those death trap looking swing rides called sky coasters. But then, RMC would work with none other than their old home park, Silverwood, in 2003 to help build the massive, impressive, heart-pounding Boulder Beach Water Park. Okay, that's not exactly what I expected. But hey, that was the same year they also constructed a wooden coaster called Timberhawk at Wild Waves Theme Park, which is located just 30 minutes south of the Windy City. Man, Fred was just hitting up all his favorite locations, wasn't he? And things just got bigger from there. You know El Toro, everyone's favorite Intamin prefabricated wooden roller coaster? RMC actually built it, and that same year they were able to build their first workshop, allowing them much more space to house all sorts sorts of equipment, offices, and other cool stuff. And then a couple years later, Intamin asked RMC to help with another project. You know T-Express, everyone's favorite Intamin prefabricated wooden roller coaster besides El Toro? They helped build that one too. And with T-Express being in South Korea, I believe this was RMC's first international project, so that's pretty cool. But you know what's not pretty cool? The 2008 financial crisis. I know, that's a piping hot take. But things were getting pretty wacky back then, to put it lightly, and many businesses, including theme parks, were cutting back on projects and laying off tons of people. So RMC was basically just taking odd jobs for a while. You know, a zip line here, a mini golf course there, just stuff that ensured their employees were still getting paid. Which that was one of the seemingly really nice things about RMC. It was a family-owned business up until 2023 when they merged with manufacturer Larson International, known for these atrocities, and that close family environment led to a structure that seemed to work for everyone employed at the company for a long time. But by now you might be thinking, all these repairs and construction jobs are nice, but when are we gonna get to the this? Well, here we go. Fred, Suzanne, and the rest of the company had seen tons of different wooden roller coasters get constructed and repaired, but that didn't mean they were wholeheartedly in love with them. See, wooden rides are just a bit more prone to different issues throughout their life and need a lot of maintenance and general upkeep. More and more parks were just starting to tear down their old wooden coasters and invest in other rides made of other materials that would last longer. So to remedy this, Fred went 9 characters down the alphabet and came up with the I-box track. This type of track would replace wooden track with steel I-beams. If a park installed this track, it would hopefully mean the coaster would last longer and require far less maintenance. Despite the seemingly ingenious idea though, a lot of engineers that Fred approached just said it wasn't going to be possible. Whether the track was too heavy for the structure or because of the cost or a multitude of other reasons, they were pretty opposed.
And now's where we introduce our final main character to this story. I present to you Coaster Jesus.
This is Alan Schilke, a roller coaster designer who, at the time of Fred's iBox idea, was working as an associate at a company called Ride Centerline. They've worked on many different rides, but the one that matters for this story is Texas Giant, a wooden roller coaster at Six Flags Over Texas. Six Flags had actually worked with them in the past to fix up the ride, you know, just spruce it up here and there to make sure it doesn't come crumbling down, stuff like that, right? But now they were coming to Ride Centerline asking for something new. A simple retrack wasn't gonna cut it. They wanted a completely new concept, and something that would be way easier to maintain. So Alan then gets in contact with Fred, who explains the iBox concept, and instead of being skeptical like everyone else, Alan is down to clown. They immediately get to work developing the new track. Once it was fully created, they showed it off to Six Flags, who decided to take a huge gamble that wound up being arguably the best decision Six Flags has ever made. Funny how that works out. But yeah, they said yes. They'd use the iBox track to completely reimagine the Texas Giant into something new. So it wasn't quite smooth sailing while building the new track. I mean, RMC's headquarters wasn't even initially outfitted to manufacture roller coasters. They had to get a ton of new equipment and figure out different space issues to actually fit all the pieces they were making. On top of that, they only had 15 employees at the time, so everyone definitely had a lot on their plate. But it all paid off, and after so much construction and testing, the iBox track was finally launched on April 22nd, 2011 with new Texas Giant.
Oh man. Now I'm coming down with coaster fanboyitis.
Yeah, I like this one. It's probably not my favorite RMC coaster I've ridden because the layout is pretty simple compared to a lot of the other rides, but it's still just such a fun time. It took the old Texas Giant, which was known for being, you know, bad, and did a little Uno reverse on it. But that didn't mean the original ride was completely gone. Something cool about RMC is that they use a lot of the original supports for the coaster, which has become a staple for them on most of their rides. And there were still a lot of similarities between the old and new layouts, but the difference was that the iBox track allowed for far more creative elements. Even if it doesn't go upside down like most of their other rides do, New Texas Giant is littered with crisp overbanks, jolts of airtime throughout, and just brilliant pacing if we ignore the mid-course brake run, which they didn't take out. That's a shame. But regardless, this thing was better than its predecessor in every way. It actually won quite a few awards in 2011, with tons of people saying it was the best coaster in the world at the time, and that all but ensured RMC's entrance as a premier manufacturer. Their growth was exponential, and their relationship with Six Flags was the springboard they needed to create some seriously sick rides. They didn't stop with the iBox track either. Soon after finishing New Texas Giant, Fred and Alan talked about creating a different type of wooden coaster track that would utilize a flattened steel running rail on top of a steel box and layers of laminated wood. That might sound complicated, but all it really means is it would result in a coaster that feels like it's made of steel, but technically it's still classified as wooden. This would be called the topper track, which has no relation to the pizza. But hey, speaking of relations, remember Silverwood? And remember that wooden coaster coaster Tremors that Fred worked on? Well, RMC actually first tested the topper track on a section of Tremors, as the track would also be used to replace high-stress areas on a coaster in order for them to run better. This installation on Tremors was successful, so RMC's good pal Six Flags decided they wanted to put some on their various wooden coasters. And eventually, the topper track found its way onto a completely new ride in 2013, that being Outlaw Run at Silver Dollar City. And of course, Six Flags wanted a piece of that sweet original topper track coaster pie, so they used it on Goliath at Six Flags Great America in 2014. Alright, maybe we back off with the topper track for a while. Alright, never mind, let's use it for the first wooden launch coaster ever. Oh, that was a mistake, let's never use it again. Oh my god, Sweden! But even if the topper track has had mixed success, the iBox track continued to be used more and more, whether it was at Six Flags parks or completely new parks RMC had never worked with. And from there, the company just kinda exploded with both new ideas and the reliable iBox coasters. I mean, they expanded their headquarters, started making their own trains, created the wildly successful single rail Raptor track, the not so wildly successful T-Rex track that will never come to fruition, ugh, worked with manufacturer S&S to develop the infestation that is their 4D free spins, made a similar partnership with manufacturer Skyline to make this failed experiment, and then like I said, in 2023 they merged with Larson, creating an even bigger manufacturing powerhouse.
There's definitely more that I could talk about with the history of RMC. I mean, just those single rail Raptor coasters probably deserve their own episode. Those things are wild. But those are just the basics of the company's beginning and how they grew to become one of the most important manufacturers out there. But hopefully that story was enough motivation for my table to grow back into the size of its predecessor. Well, I'm gonna go to bed. Hopefully in the morning it'll be much bigger.
The next day.
Oh boy, let's go see how big it got. What the... That's not a table. Did I use the wrong soil?